Hey there traders, I just wanted to give you a recap of the trades that I took last week at thestockbandit.com. It was week 12 of the year, and although the market put in some well-deserved rest, we needed to digest that recent move, and of course that's covered in this weekend's index video. Be sure and catch that as well. But there was, a nice selection of good trading opportunities for those of us with shorter term time frames. So despite the market resting overall, there still were some good chances to turn out a profit. So let me go through them and the trades that I took last week one at a time. Now, Monday, I took a trade in this PXP, looking for a breakout here. We had a couple of good trend line breaks here in recent weeks, and this stock had come up against resistance, and I wanted to get long on a breakout through 46.85. So it did break that level on Monday morning. That's on this bar right here, and if you're not watching this in full screen mode on the 720p setting, go ahead and shift to that now within the player. You will get the best quality of video. But this thing only made minor progress beyond that level, and then it faltered. So I stopped out for a 47-cent loss, or 1%. I also took a trade in this EXP, which had a really good descending trend line or descending channel here, which was broken to the upside with a nice surge higher, and then a few days of just lateral price actions. This thing kind of digested that move and created a little bit of a flag type of pattern. I wanted to get long through this trend line right here. That was at 35.70, and the stock broke through that on Monday. That's on this bar right here, but it did not make much progress beyond that. And it went to a multi-day high, and then it just couldn't hold up, and it reversed lower, and it stopped me out for a 1% loss. So it took a 36-cent loss there. I also took a trade in this ALB on the short side on this rising trend line break. We had the stock had come up and carved out a high here after a really nice multi-month trend higher here, shallow pullback, and then a lift back up to that same area, and a failure at resistance. So this stock was unable to reclaim that resistance area. It sold off very sharply. Then we had this kind of lackluster rebound, which was starting to stall out. So I wanted to get short through a break of this rising trend line. That was at 63.70 right here on this particular bar on Monday. But it had no follow through. So this thing reversed back up. It stopped me out for a 64-cent loss, or 1% loss by the close. So Monday, not a good start to the week, but Tuesday came along. I took a few trades here as well. One of them was in this CLR, which I had taken for a swing trade right here on the 14th of the month. I wanted to get long here. The stock had carved out some support in this area, and also was in clearly still an uptrend, even though it had pulled back in kind of a shallow fashion for a couple of weeks. I wanted to get long on a trend line break here. That was at 89.60. But on day one, the stock showed hesitation. It did so for the next few days, and then last week on Tuesday, as this thing turned lower, it stopped me out. I took a stop at 86.40, which handed me a 3.5% loss. This was a swing trade there, and it was the only swing that I closed out last week. But all in all, it just wasn't ready to turn higher. So I'm going to keep this on the radar. May, in fact, even redraw this trend line here, kind of shallow it out a little bit, because this overall uptrend is still intact. It's just stock has pulled back some and then just been basing, so it's just not quite ready to go. I also took a trade in this Netflix, NFLX, which had on Monday broken out of this kind of narrowing consolidation. We had this descending trend line. We had lateral support here around the 105 area that had been tested some lately. The stock lifted and turned higher on Monday. So I just want to get long on kind of a continuation move higher through Monday's high. I got long on Tuesday at 115.20. It ran very quickly to 116.75. And that was a $1.55 move, and then it reversed from there. So what I did was I flatted this trade as this thing made some decent initial progress and then turned around and reversed pretty sharply lower. I just moved my stop and got taken out for a flat. I also took a trade in Amazon, as this stock had settled into this real narrow and narrowing trading range. So we had these two converging trend lines really squeezing price from below and above. So dips were getting bought on every pullback, resulting in higher lows. We also saw bounces getting sold, resulting in lower highs. I got to say that slowly so I get it straight here, but nonetheless, 187.25 was the upper trend line here, and I got long right there as that trend line was broken on Tuesday. And this was my trade of the week. In fact, I mean, this made my week for this trade in Amazon. This thing ran more than $7 as it ran very quickly higher to the 194.32 level. And so just it was no pain at all. It was just a giant move and a really good, solid, decisive move out of this wedge. So excellent move. It also came on very heavy volume, as you see. That was the trade of the week. Also, I took one other trade in this Alexion on Tuesday. I got long through this 90.10 level. This was kind of some short-term resistance around the whole number at 90. I wanted to be sure that level was crossed. And this thing lifted to 90.53 right here on Tuesday, but it didn't make a whole lot of progress. In fact, from there, just then kind of pulled back and chopped around. It never stopped me out. I took a 6-cent loss at the close. So rather than seeing this thing run enough to take a profit or pull back enough to stop me out, it did neither. It just kind of floundered around. So essentially that's a flatted trade, but technically I took a 6-cent loss there. On Wednesday, I took a few trades. GPOR. Here's another stock that had failed at some major resistance here not long ago. Pretty good breakdown there, and then a real lackluster rebound attempt. And it had created this rising trend line. So on Wednesday, I got short as that trend line was broken to the downside, $32.30. Saw some minor progress, and then it reversed higher, stopped me out for a 33-cent loss. Ultimately pulled back again late in the day and then broke down pretty hard on Thursday. So it's one of those trades where I just didn't time it quite right. I was ultimately right on the direction, but I ended up taking a very small loss in the trade. Also took a trade in this Crocs, which is a great trade on Wednesday, CROX. Stock had pulled back for several weeks beneath this trend line. I got long at 1980 as that trend line was broken to the upside, and got a really nice clean 3% ride to the upside to the $20.50 level before a pullback. Then it actually ran a little higher, made another new high later in the day to $20.60. So it went $10 higher. But ultimately, that initial move was the trade for a nice 3% move, and just a good solid trade there. On Thursday, I took no triggers at all. The trades that I had set up for plays either gapped through the levels I was intending to take them at for day trades, or they just simply didn't go through. And so it's one of those days where I just sat on my hands and looked for some additional trades to make intraday that I had discovered just based on activity during the day. But according to my trade plan from the night before, there was nothing that went on Thursday. So Friday came around. I took this in INVN, which is InvenSense. Took it on the long side through this $21.20 level. Now we saw one day above that level, but it was unable to hold, and we also saw 1, 2, in a few more days, just kind of respecting this 21.20 area. So I got long there on Friday on the breakout. Initial attempt stopped me out for a 22-cent loss, but the overall trend was still up in the stock. And in fact, let me just show you the intraday chart. This was kind of that first attempt and kind of shakeout type of move, but ultimately this thing did lift again, and as it was able to push back through that level, the market was lifting higher as well. And so this thing ultimately, for those who gave it a second chance, saw a nice little move up to the 22.08 level. So it easily made up for the first failure for those who were willing to give this one another chance, given that it did have some market sympathy with it. Another one was NXPI, which was a stock that's in an uptrend. It had just kind of based here lately with this little channel type of look, but I wanted to get long through a trend line break right here. That was right at this level, which was at $26.50. So made a quick move to $26.90. It rested a little bit. In fact, let me just show you the intraday chart here as well. So there's that trend line break. We had just kind of a minor test of that. It didn't stop me out. Lifted up to this 26.90, pulled back a little, and then just kind of churned here for several hours before one more little late day surge up to the 26.98 level. So there was a decent trade there, and almost a 2% winner. So nice little trade. And then one more that I took on Friday was in the Shutterfly, SFLY, which had pulled back a little bit beneath this descending trend line. And if I zoom in here, you'll see it a little bit more clearly. But multiple touches on this trend line, very quiet downside volume here for the past several sessions, and really just not a lot of selling pressure here. So I was looking to get long if this trend line was broken to the upside, which it was. That was at $32.20. Initially got stopped out for a 33-cent loss. That was kind of right here. See lots of opening indecision. So generally what I'll do there is I'll just kind of draw a line there at the high of the day. So that opening high was right there, 32.26. So call it 32.30. That's kind of the spot that you want to give a trade a second chance if it's able to push back through there. And when it did, the market was in rally mode as well. So when you get kind of that new high, kind of a breakout of this opening churn type of action, that's your signal that you have a chance to get long again. And so, midday we caught a really nice move here, and this thing ultimately trended all the way back up to the 33.56 level. So, another second chance type of entry, which paid for the first stop out, but, given the right conditions, there was another, shot at some upside there. So, sometimes in a choppy market environment like we've been in for the past few days with the indices resting, you're going to see some initial failures in trades which are going to make their moves on subsequent attempts. And so that's just something that comes with some experience. But generally in a market which is on the move, it's harder to trust those second chance plays. If we're in a market that's showing some decent momentum, I want to give it a first chance and take what I get. If we're in a churning, choppy type of market, I may have to give trades a couple of chances before I ultimately catch that move. So that's just a good little lesson from this week. So I do have one open swing position, which I'll of course cover here since once I'm out of the trade. But while I'm in positions, I only discuss them with subscribers of the site. So I was very selective last week with adding new overnight exposure with the indices trying to put in some rest and lots of just churning, basing action in the overall market. You can see how sideways we've been going here in the NASDAQ. So we're holding up well, and again, I'll cover that in the weekend index video. But I do expect to add some positions in the days ahead based on the growing number of high quality patterns out there that I'm already seeing in my weekend research. So there's a look back at week 12. I hope you found it helpful. To those of you who are not currently members at thestockbandit.com, stop by the site, check out the free trial that we offer, because it's not only going to add some plays to your radar every night, but it's going to teach you quite a bit as well about analyzing the market, about reading the charts, about letting some of these patterns mature, and then knowing which ones to turn to based on the conditions that we're in. So we've served traders now in 47 countries, and that's for a reason. So we'd love to have the opportunity to trade with you as well. Thanks for watching this video. I will have more for you soon, but in the meantime, trade like a bandit.